the most dangerously delusional person you've ever had to deal with. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just smiled, like she hadn't done anything wrong. Even after everything she ruined. That's when I realized, she actually believed she was the victim. Her name was Elise. We met her the way you meet most trouble, slowly, innocently, and with all the warning signs disguised as charm. She moved into our building after her divorce, into Unit 2B, directly below mine. I was on 3B with my wife and our son, Leo. Elise introduced herself with a plate of cookies, the kind of gesture you only see in movies now. She was polite, funny in a dry sort of way, and had a way of making you feel like she already knew you. I grew up in a building just like this, she said. The sound of footsteps above me? It's comforting. I remember thinking she seemed lonely, maybe even a little fragile but friendly. Nothing about her seemed dangerous. Not at first. My wife, Erin, wasn't so sure. There's something off, she whispered the night after Elise first visited. She watched you too closely. I brushed it off. Said she was just trying to connect, maybe overcompensating after her divorce. Erin didn't argue. She rarely did, but I noticed she stopped answering Elise's texts after that. And Elise, she noticed too. Over the next few months, things got stranger in small, almost ignorable ways. Elise would show up with little gifts, a potted plant for our balcony, a hand-sewn bib for Leo. She once left a note on our door that said, "You guys are the only normal ones in this whole place. So glad you're here." We never talked about it, but I started getting the feeling she was trying to wedge herself into our lives. Like we were a project, or a performance she was trying to insert herself into. Then came the noise complaints. Not to the building management, to us, directly. I heard Leo crying at 2 a.m. "Everything okay?" She'd text. "Or not judging, but you guys were fighting last night. You okay?" Except, we weren't fighting. And Leo wasn't crying. Erin started keeping the baby monitor volume low. I stopped walking around barefoot in the mornings. We joked that Elise must have super hearing. Then one afternoon, I came home early from work. The front door was ajar. I stepped inside, expecting to see Erin or the babysitter, but the apartment was empty. At least, it looked that way at first. I heard a rustling sound in the hallway. I turned the corner, and there she was, Elise, standing in our bedroom. Going through Leo's dresser. She didn't flinch, didn't even apologize, just smiled and said, "I was looking for the blanket I made." "I thought you lost it." My throat dried out. "You have a key?" "Oh," she laughed. "You must have left the door open." I knocked first. I didn't believe her, but I couldn't prove otherwise. Erin was furious. She wanted to call the police. I talked her down, said maybe Elise was confused, or overly attached, or lonely. That was my mistake. The next week, Erin's work laptop went missing. A few days after that, Leo started crying whenever we walked past the stairwell, the one that led to Elise's floor. We asked the babysitter if anything weird had happened. She hesitated. Then she said, "That lady downstairs, she asked to hold Leo once. Just for a second. Said she missed having kids around. We asked her not to let Elise near him again. She agreed. And for a while, things went quiet. Elise stopped texting. No more cookies. No more gifts. I almost convinced myself we'd overreacted. That maybe she'd picked up on our discomfort and backed off. Then Erin's sister came to stay with us. Rachel, the kind of person who doesn't tiptoe around tension. Within 20 minutes of being in our apartment, she pointed at the ceiling and said, "You know someone drilled a hole into this vent, right?" We looked up. Sure enough, one of the air vents in Leo's room had a tiny, deliberate-looking hole in the mesh. Not big enough to see much, but big enough for a pinhole camera. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself maybe it had always been there. Maybe it was damage from installation. But Rachel climbed up on a chair, unscrewed the vent cover, and found what looked like the lens of a small webcam glued inside. Erin went pale. I called the building manager. He came up, looked, and said, "This isn't from us. And it wasn't there during your last inspection, that was 2 months ago." We filed a police report. They took the device, opened an investigation, but nothing came of it. No prints, no usable footage, no clear suspect. Elise acted like nothing had happened. She even brought cookies again. This time with a note, for Leo. "I promise there's no camera inside." That's when we got the restraining order. That's when I changed the locks. That's when Erin stopped sleeping. But here's the part that still eats at me. When the officer came to serve Elise the papers, she didn't deny anything. She looked at him, looked at me, and said, "I understand. You're protecting him. I'd do the same. But he'll find his way back to me. You'll see." She said it like she believed it. Like Leo belonged to her. Like we were the ones who had trespassed. After that, she stopped being friendly. But she didn't disappear. Mail would go missing. We'd find scratch marks on our door. Once, Erin found a Polaroid in her car. A photo of Leo taken from behind while we were in the park. Elise wasn't in the photo. But who else could it have been? I tried to confront her. Knocked on her door. No answer. I went to the super, asked to check the maintenance log. He showed me that Elise had submitted 4 separate requests in the past month, all claiming that someone was harassing her from upstairs. In every note, she described Erin in disturbing detail. The woman upstairs bangs on the floor and screams at me through the walls. I believe she is abusing the child. We showed those notes to our lawyer. He said Elise was laying the groundwork. For what, we didn't know yet. Then one morning, the babysitter didn't show up. Erin had to call in late to work. When she checked her phone, she had a missed call, from a blocked number, and a voicemail that said, "It's okay. He's safe now. You won't hurt him anymore." The voice was Elise's. Calm, sweet, unshaken. We tore through the apartment. Checked every room, every lock, every closet. Leo was asleep in his crib. Untouched. We called the police. They filed it, but again, no action. She didn't physically approach the child. They said, "It's not a direct threat." But we knew. We knew she was circling something. Waiting, planning. And we were right. A week later, Leo vanished. I don't remember the exact moment I realized he was gone. It was a blur. The kind your brain doesn't store properly because panic sets in too fast. Erin had stepped out to grab groceries. I was working from home, half watching Leo play in the living room, half focused on emails. I got up to take a quick call in the hallway. Less than 3 minutes. When I came back, the door was still locked from the inside. But Leo wasn't there. Not in the living room. Not in his room. Not in the bathroom. Not hiding in the closet like he sometimes did when he wanted to surprise us. He was just gone. I remember checking the front door again, even though I knew I hadn't heard it open. I ran to the windows. We were on the 3rd floor. There was no way. Erin walked in 10 minutes later to find me tearing the apartment apart. I don't remember what I said. I just remember her dropping the bags and screaming. The building's security footage showed nothing. Nothing from the hallway, nothing from the stairwell, nothing from the elevator. It was like he vanished into thin air. The police started asking questions, some of them with a tone I'll never forget. Was the child playing near the windows? Any history of mental illness in the home? Any possibility one of you took him somewhere and forgot? I wanted to hit someone. Erin was catatonic by the 2nd day. I slept maybe an hour total between the interviews, the searches, the endless pacing and praying. Then, on the 3rd night, a call came. No caller ID. I answered before the first ring even finished. "He's safe," the voice said. He just needed a break from the screaming. I knew the voice. Elise. I didn't say a word, didn't give her the satisfaction. She continued, softly, "You'll find him soon. Cold, maybe, but safe. Just remember, I gave him back. I didn't have to." Then she hung up. I threw the phone. Erin came running. I told her. She didn't ask me to repeat it. She just picked up the phone and dialed 911. The police came, again. This time they took it seriously. They searched Elise's apartment. They found nothing. No child. No evidence. No signs of forced entry. She stood in the doorway calmly, with her arms folded, and said, "I don't know what they're talking about. I've been here all day. Alone." But one of the younger officers, maybe the only one paying attention, noticed something odd in her kitchen. A vent cover. Slightly crooked. He pulled it open. Inside was a plastic baby bottle. Empty. No prints. Nothing illegal, but enough to make them suspicious. They brought in dogs. Searched the basement. That's where they found him. In a deep chest freezer. Empty of food, plugged in but not running. The cord had been cut. Leo was inside, wrapped in 2 blankets. Unconscious, but breathing. The EMT said he had mild hypothermia, but no injuries. No bruises. No marks. Just cold. Too cold for a child to have crawled in there himself. They arrested Elise on the spot. But not for kidnapping, not at first. The charges were vague: child endangerment, trespassing, obstruction. She didn't resist. Didn't cry. She just smiled. That same unsettling smile. And when they asked her if she had anything to say, she replied, "They'll never understand." I saved him. It wasn't just delusion. It was something deeper. Something practiced. Like she'd rehearsed that line. Like she'd been waiting to say it. Elise was held for 72 hours. Then transferred to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. I thought that would be the end of it. that they'd finally see what she was. But the report came back, fit to stand trial. No history of mental illness. No evidence of abuse. And no video footage placing her in our apartment that day. We knew she did it. She admitted it, but in the eyes of the court, there was reasonable doubt. Her lawyer argued that we had no proof she ever touched the child. That we were fabricating a narrative out of fear and guilt. The jury believed it, or maybe they just didn't want to believe the alternative, that someone like her could do something so calculated, so controlled, and still walk around smiling. Elise was released under supervision. Given a fine, community service, a recommendation for outpatient therapy. That was it. No record, no restraining order renewal, nothing permanent. We moved. Within 2 weeks of the verdict, we sold the apartment and left the city. Erin changed her number. I changed jobs. Leo still wakes up screaming some nights. Still flinches when he hears keys in a lock. Still asks, "Are the doors closed, Daddy?" And every time, I say yes. Every time, I tell him he's safe now. And I want to believe it. I really do. But sometimes, when I check the porch camera, I swear I see someone just out of frame. A shape, a shadow, waiting, watching. And sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night and walk down the hall to check on Leo, I find his door slightly open, even though I know I closed it. I don't know where she is now. I don't know if she's watching. I don't know if she ever really left us. But I do know this: when someone like that tells themselves they're the victim, there's no limit to what they'll justify. And that's what makes them so dangerous. Not the violence, not the threats, the certainty, the quiet, smiling certainty that what they're doing is right. That's what keeps me up at night. Not what she did, but what she still believes. I've tried to move on. We all have. New town, new house, different routines. Erin keeps herself busy, too busy, sometimes, with community work and late nights cleaning things that don't need cleaning. Leo started preschool last fall. He's quiet, polite, well-behaved. Too well-behaved. The teachers say he's exceptionally mature for his age, and I smile when they say that. I nod. But inside, I know. He doesn't act like other kids because he doesn't feel safe like other kids. He scans rooms before entering. He never turns his back to a closed door. He doesn't cry when he's hurt, he apologizes. Sorry, he'll say, rubbing his knee after a fall. Sorry, sorry. That kind of fear gets baked into you. It changes how you grow. I still think about Elise more than I should. Not because I miss her, God, no, but because I don't understand her. I've gone back through every message, every text, every moment we shared before things got strange. I tried to pinpoint the exact shift. When the friendliness turned into fixation. When she went from helpful neighbor to whatever that was. There's no clear line. That's what makes people like her so terrifying. It's not like she snapped one day. It was slow, layered, deliberate. The scariest part was how normal it all looked from the outside. If you asked any of our neighbors back then, even the ones who saw the police cars, they'd say, "Elise? She always seems so nice." I eventually got a call from a reporter. Someone who'd been following the trial quietly, watching how it barely made a ripple outside our local news. He said he was working on a piece about unprosecuted threats, people who fall through the cracks because they don't leave a trail of blood, just fear. He asked if I'd speak with him, off the record. I agreed, cautiously. We met at a coffee shop in another town. I showed him some of the old texts. The voicemail, a few still photos from the police file, redacted. He listened carefully, took notes. Then he said something I'll never forget: "You're not the only one." I froze. What do you mean? He hesitated. Then he pulled out a file, thin, manila, marked only with a red dot. Inside were clippings, court records, a printout from an old therapy blog, a school report from a different state. Different names, different cities, but the pattern was eerily familiar. Elise had gone by at least 2 other names in the past decade. Different identities, same behaviors, neighbors befriended, boundaries crossed, delusions projected. In one case, a restraining order had been filed by a woman with a newborn. In another, a school counselor flagged her for showing up at a playground unaccompanied, but asking children by name. None of the cases stuck. Nothing ever quite rose to the level of a prosecutable offense. She's smart, the reporter said. Too smart. She dances right at the edge of the law. Knows what she can get away with. I felt the floor drop out under me. We weren't her only story. Just the one that got closest to making the headlines. He asked if I'd go on record. I said no, not yet. I had a family to protect. And Elise, she was still out there. A few months later, someone broke into our mailbox. Took nothing, but left something behind, a single sheet of paper, folded twice. I opened it slowly. There was no writing, just a hand-drawn smiley face. Red ink, round eyes, a little too wide. We didn't call the police. What could we say? There were no fingerprints, no cameras nearby, just a feeling. That kind of feeling that crawls up your spine and settles behind your ribs. Aaron didn't speak for the rest of the day. Leo kept asking why we looked scared. I told him it was just a prank. But I started carrying pepper spray. Aaron bought a second lock for the front door. We stopped opening packages we didn't recognize. We stopped sleeping all the way through the night. People think the worst thing someone like Elise can do is what she did to Leo. But they're wrong. The worst thing she did was take away our sense of normal. She rewrote the rules for what felt safe. She planted doubt in every corner of our lives. And the scariest part? She did it without ever raising her voice. Without breaking a window. Without leaving a bruise. I still have dreams where I'm walking down the hallway and I see her standing in the kitchen. Just standing there, like she belongs there, like she never left. And I wake up drenched in sweat, heart hammering, and I check the baby monitor, even though Leo's almost 5 now and sleeps in his own room. Sometimes, I wonder what she tells herself. Does she believe we wronged her? That we stole something from her? That she's the one who suffered? I think the answer is yes. I think, in her mind, she truly believes she was the one abandoned. The one betrayed. That we took Leo from her, even though he was never hers to begin with. And that's what makes her dangerous. Not the actions, not the stalking, not the lies. It's the belief, the unwavering conviction that her version of the story is the only one that matters. If you're reading this, maybe you've met someone like her. Maybe you're dealing with someone like her right now. If so, I'll tell you what I wish someone had told us: don't wait for the violence. Don't wait for the moment when it's too obvious to ignore. Trust your instincts. Trust the discomfort, because people like Elise, they don't need weapons, they just need time. Time to make you doubt yourself. Time to make you lower your guard. Time to convince the world they're the ones being hurt. I still don't know where she is. I don't know if I ever will. But I check the locks every night. I watch the cameras. And every time a stranger smiles too long at my son, I feel something cold move through my chest. Because I've seen what delusion can do. I've seen what it looks like when a person rewrites reality and drags you into their version of it. And I've seen what it costs to crawl back out. So yeah, that's my answer. Who's the most dangerously delusional person I've ever had to deal with? She lived right downstairs. After we moved, I thought I could let it go. I convinced myself that she wouldn't follow us. That we were just one more chapter in whatever deranged story she was living. For a while, it even seemed like that might be true. A whole year passed. No letters, no messages, no signs. Aaron started sleeping through the night again. Leo laughed more. I let my guard down, just enough to believe the worst might be behind us. Then, the birthday card came. It wasn't addressed to Leo by name. Just little one. It arrived at Aaron's work address, not our home. Which meant someone had tracked her. Someone knew where we were. Inside the card was a folded photograph, Leo's preschool, group picture day. He was in the back row, smiling. The photo wasn't the official one. It had been taken from an angle, like someone standing off to the side, zooming in with a phone. On the back, in red ink, it said, "He's getting so big. You must be proud." Aaron didn't speak for a full minute after opening it. Just stood there. Then she started shaking. We called the school. Asked about security. They said no one suspicious had been reported, no breaches. But they promised to look into it. And suddenly we were back to that state we thought we'd left behind, quiet panic. Smiling through teeth, checking windows twice, picking Leo up ourselves instead of using the bus. Leaving lights on. We gave the photo to police. Again. They opened a report. Again. But nothing came of it. Again. There's no direct threat, they said, just a strange card. No return address, no prints. The officer looked sympathetic, but exhausted, like he'd seen this too many times and knew how it would end. That week, I started driving around town at night. Watching side streets. Checking every unfamiliar car parked longer than 5 minutes. I started seeing shadows where there weren't any. Sometimes I'd think I saw her reflection in store windows. Just a flicker. A shape. Always gone by the time I turned around. I tried to tell myself it was trauma. Residual stress. But then the notes started showing up again. Not in the mail. Not on our doorstep. In Leo's backpack. Folded between his drawing papers. Slipped behind snack wrappers. Once inside the cover of a book he brought home from school. All of them in the same handwriting. The same red pen. He still talks to me, you know. I miss our quiet time. He looked at me like he remembered. We didn't tell Leo. We couldn't. He was only 5. We told the school. They tightened procedures, put a camera on every hallway, assigned a staff member to check bags. But the notes kept coming. Like she was slipping through cracks no one could see. We pulled Leo out of school. Homeschooled for the rest of the year. Installed a new security system. Erin quit her job. I started working remote full-time. Our house became a bunker. And still, it wasn't enough. One afternoon, Leo told me something that still makes my blood run cold. We were drawing together. Quiet, calm. He looked up and said, "Miss Elise doesn't wear the red coat anymore." I froze. "What did you say?" He blinked. "She used to have a red coat. With the big buttons. But now she wears a gray one. Like yours." I didn't want to scare him. So I smiled, nodded, changed the subject. But later, after he fell asleep, I pulled up every recording from the week before. Every camera, every angle, and there it was, 15 seconds of footage, from the backyard motion sensor. A woman, back turned, gray coat, standing at the fence line, looking toward the house, then gone. No face, no license plate, no reason to arrest. But I knew, Erin knew, Leo knew. We decided to move again. Different state, different coast, changed our last names, filed all the paperwork, quietly, asked friends to never post photos online, scrubbed our digital trail as much as we could. It took months, cost more than we could afford. But we did it. This time, we didn't tell anyone where we were going. No goodbyes, just vanished. And for a while, for a full 2 years, it worked. We had peace. Leo made new friends. He learned to ride a bike. He started sleeping through the night without the hallway light on. Erin smiled again, not the forced kind, but the real kind. I even started going back to the gym, making small talk with neighbors. For the first time in what felt like forever, we had a life again. Then, last month, the email arrived. Not to me, not to Erin, to Leo, through his school email, the one he barely knew how to check. Subject line, "Hello again, little one." No body text, just an attachment, a drawing. Crayons, red, black, and gray. A picture of our house. And standing outside, under a tree, a woman in a gray coat with big red buttons. Smiling, I called the school, shut everything down, bought a new router, factory reset every device, burned the damn picture, and then I sat on the floor of our living room and cried like a child. Not because I was scared, I've been scared for years, but because I finally understood something I'd been trying to deny. She's never going to stop. You can change your name. You can move across the country. You can lock every door and teach your child to never talk to strangers. But you can't make someone let go if they don't believe they're holding on to something wrong. To Elise, we're not a family that escaped. We're a family that was stolen from her. And in her mind, the one where she's still the victim, still the hero, she's just waiting. Watching, planning for the day when the rest of the world sees what she already knows. That Leo was always hers. And that one day, she'll take him back. I don't know how this ends. But I check the cameras every night. I change the passwords every week. I've taught Leo what to do if someone grabs him. I've taught him to scream, to bite, to run. But deep down, I wish I could teach him one thing more. How to forget her. Because that's the one thing I haven't been able to do myself. We didn't go to the police this time. Not because we didn't care, but because we already knew how it would play out. There'd be paperwork, apologies, a warning, maybe, but no charges, no arrests. Elise was a ghost in the system. A ghost with just enough legal savvy to make herself invisible when it mattered most. Erin and I talked seriously, for the first time, about leaving the country. Starting fresh. New identities, new language, new everything. But we couldn't do that to Leo. He had a life now. Friends. A sense of home, no matter how fragile. Instead, I hired someone. Not a hitman. I'm not that far gone, but someone with the skills to trace things quietly. A guy who used to work cybercrimes in a major city before switching to private security. I told him everything, paid him up front, gave him every document, every photo, every incident log. 3 weeks later, he sent me a file. Elise, if that's even her real name, which it probably isn't, had resurfaced in another state last year. Different name again, slightly altered appearance, shorter hair, lighter contacts. She had applied for work at a daycare. Got through 2 interviews before someone noticed her behavior was too intense around certain children. No charges filed, no official complaints, but the woman who had flagged her name in the HR system remembered her. She asked if one of the kids felt familiar, the woman wrote in a private email. She said, "Sometimes you just know when they're supposed to be yours." I felt physically sick reading that. My guy kept digging. Turns out she'd lived in 4 different cities since the trial. Always alone. Always under a different variant of her name, Elise, Eloise, Lisette, even Ella once. She always paid rent in cash. Changed phones every 6 months. Used library computers for anything important. But the most disturbing part? She had never stopped drawing. Each apartment she'd left behind had scraps, childlike sketches, outlines of houses, parks, playgrounds. And in almost every one, a boy stood alone in the foreground. Always the same shape, same size. Sometimes he was smiling, sometimes he was crying, once, he was lying down. Face hidden. The landlord of her last known address said she left in the middle of the night. Didn't owe rent, he said. Just vanished. Left a box of drawings in the closet and a note that said, he isn't safe yet. I asked my guy if she was close now. He said, I can't prove it. But I'd bet on it. So we changed schools again. Didn't tell Leo why, just said it was time for a new adventure. He nodded, like he always does, too used to the churn. We bought a house this time, not an apartment, not a rental, something more permanent. Something we could lock down, reinforce, make our own. But permanence, I've learned, is just a story we tell ourselves. A way to pretend we're not still being hunted. The nights are the worst. Not because anything happens, but because nothing does. Nothing except the waiting, the wondering, the constant replay of old footage in my head. That day in the park. The time we found Leo in the freezer. Her standing in the doorway, smiling like we were the ones trespassing. I've tried therapy 3 times. Each time I think I'm getting somewhere. I start second-guessing everything I say. What if they think I'm the unstable one? What if I say too much? What if she gets access to my records? That's what it does to you. Paranoia stops being irrational. It becomes protocol. Erin doesn't cry anymore. She stopped after that last move. Not because she doesn't feel it, but because there's a kind of grief that settles too deep for tears. She once told me she dreams about walking through a department store, calling Leo's name, but every child she turns around has someone else's face. I asked her once if she ever thought about confronting Elise again. She said, "Number." Because she'd be calm. She'd act like we were the ones with the problem. And I don't think I could survive hearing that again. We both know she's right. What scares me now isn't that Elise will show up again, it's that she won't need to. She's already infected everything. The way we parent. The way we react when the phone rings. The way Leo looks at strangers a second too long, like trying to figure out if they know something he doesn't. He's older now, old enough to remember. Not everything, but flashes. Smells. Cold. A woman with red buttons. Sometimes he asks questions. Why do we move so much? Or why don't I have baby pictures like my friends? We give him partial truths. We had to stay safe. Things got complicated, but we know the full truth is coming. One day he'll Google. He'll find a breadcrumb. He'll read something he wasn't meant to. And then what? What do you say to your child when they find out someone tried to claim them like property? That someone looked into your family and saw not people, but parts? I think about writing it all down for him. Not just this post. Everything. A file. A timeline. So that when the time comes, he knows the story isn't just rumor. That we fought. That we never stopped fighting. That even when we were silent, we were watching. Just like her. That's the worst part, isn't it? How much we've become like her. The cameras. The locks. The surveillance. The constant suspicion. I wonder sometimes if that's what she wanted. Not just Leo, but to make us live like she lives. Trapped. Paranoid. Isolated. Believing we're the ones being followed, but unsure if we're imagining it. And sometimes, in the quietest hours of the night, I hear Erin breathing beside me. I hear Leo stir in his room. And for a moment, I forget. I feel like a father again. Like a husband. Not a survivor. Not a prisoner. And then a floorboard creaks, or a motion light flickers, and it's all back. She's not here. I know that. But she is. In every window we double check. In every car we don't recognize. In every parent-teacher meeting where we sit a little closer to the exit. She is. Because you don't have to be physically present to haunt someone. You just have to convince them they'll never be free. I started documenting everything, not just for Leo, for myself. So I could track what was real and what wasn't. A folder on my desktop titled If I Forget. Inside, scanned notes, time-stamped photos, police reports, screenshots of emails. Hand-drawn maps of where she might have stood based on camera angles. It felt obsessive, but it was the only way I knew how to feel grounded. When everything around you feels uncertain, documentation becomes your religion. Erin doesn't know about the folder. I don't think she'd stop me, but I know it would break her a little more. She's trying to live. She plants herbs now, reads books cover to cover again. She joined a running group. Sometimes I watch her stretch in the driveway at sunrise. Earbuds in, and for a second I pretend we're normal. That there was no freezer. No smiley face notes. No reason for us to memorize license plates in our own neighborhood. But even that image has limits. Last week, Leo came home from his new school with a drawing. At first glance, it was innocent, a simple sketch of our house. But in the bottom right corner, a small figure stood behind a tree. The shape was vague, but the red dots on the coat buttons were unmistakable. I kept my voice calm. Asked Leo about it. Who's this? He shrugged. It's just the neighbor. I think she watches the dogs sometimes. We don't have a neighbor who walks a dog. Not anymore. The last woman on our street with a dog moved out in December. I asked what the woman looked like. Leo said, I don't know. She smiles a lot. She never talks. I scanned the yard that night. Found nothing. But I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch until dawn, a flashlight and a crowbar in my lap. I must have looked insane. Maybe I am. The next morning, there was a footprint in the garden bed. Too small for me or Aaron. Not Leo's either. Not deep enough to tell direction. But fresh. I didn't show Aaron. I couldn't. Because there's only so many times you can say she's back before it sounds like a ritual. And because we both know, even if she never steps onto our porch, even if she never sends another note, she's already accomplished what she wanted. She lives here now, not physically, but inside us. In the decisions we make. The places we avoid. The way we raise our son. In every locked drawer and double-checked window. Leo has started sleepwalking, not often, but enough that we had to put a bell on his door. The first time I found him, he was in the kitchen, holding one of the old drawings she had mailed. The ones we thought we'd burned. I asked him where he found it. He just said, she gave it to me. I didn't press him. He was still half asleep. The second time, he was standing in the hallway, facing the front door. Silent. Still. Like he was waiting for someone to knock. We booked him an appointment with a child psychologist. She's good, patient, gentle. She hasn't asked too many questions yet. Just builds trust. But last session, she asked me if we'd ever considered relocating again. Not for safety, she clarified, but to reset the narrative. I wanted to scream. There is no reset. There is no new chapter when the last one never ended. But I didn't say that. I just nodded and said we'd think about it. Sometimes I wonder what Elise thinks about us now. Whether she still sees us as a threat. Or whether we've become something else. Something mythologized in her mind. A story she tells herself over and over until the truth doesn't matter anymore. The truth, we were never anything but neighbors. She made herself a part of our life. Wrote herself in, line by line, until we couldn't tell what was real anymore. Until we started rewriting ourselves to make space for her madness. A few weeks ago, I went to the library. Not the one in our town, 2 towns over. I needed books for Leo, and I didn't want to risk running into anyone who might recognize our names. I used cash. I gave a fake last name for the account. Old habits. As I was checking out, the librarian smiled politely and said, "Oh, your wife was just here yesterday." I froze. "Sorry? Your wife," she repeated. She checked out some child development books. Said your son loved the new school. I didn't correct her, just smiled and nodded. But Aaron hadn't been there. And we don't talk to strangers about Leo's school. I left the books. Drove home. Told Aaron everything. We checked our security cams. Nothing unusual, but we changed every password. Again. And now I don't go anywhere without wondering who she's impersonated this time. What face she wears when she asks about us. Whether the woman in the store who held the door too long, or the barista who asked about my kid's name, or the jogger who smiled a little too knowingly, whether any of them were her. Or if, even worse, someone else has started helping her. Because that's the kind of delusion Elise breeds, not just the belief that we're connected, but the need to prove it to others. To gather evidence, to collect support, and eventually, to make someone else believe that we're the ones keeping her from something that was rightfully hers. There's a quietness in her type of madness that doesn't scream, it whispers. It tells the story so often it starts sounding true. Not just to herself, but to anyone who listens long enough. And the longer we live like this, hiding, controlling, fearing, the more her version starts to seem plausible to outsiders. Because no one wants to believe that danger can come dressed in sweetness. In neighborly smiles. In quiet women who say please and thank you and bring cookies. But I know what happens when you ignore the feeling in your gut. When you dismiss the quiet invasion. Because by the time you realize how far it's gone, it's already too late. I've thought about going public with this. About using my real name. About testifying somewhere, somehow, so there's a record of what happened, a warning. Not just for us, but for whoever she finds next. But I can't do that. Not yet, because she's still out there. And as long as she is, anything I say in my own name becomes a risk, not just to me, but to Aaron, to Leo. Especially Leo. So instead, I'm writing this here. Anonymously, maybe uselessly, but I need someone to hear it. To know that this kind of thing happens. That sometimes the most dangerous people aren't violent, or loud, or obviously unstable. Sometimes they're calm, deliberate, charming. Sometimes they look like someone who just wants to be part of your life. Sometimes they knock on your door with a smile. I don't know what she believes now. Maybe that we wronged her. Maybe that we're evil. Maybe that Leo is still waiting for her to save him. I try not to imagine the stories she's telling herself, but I do. I imagine what it's like to live in a world where you're always the victim, no matter what you've done. Where every boundary is a betrayal. Every no is cruelty. Where obsession is rebranded as love. And I think the worst part is, I'll never convince her otherwise. Because she doesn't think she's dangerous. She thinks she's right, and that makes her unstoppable. I don't know what happens next. I'd like to say we're safe now. That the new cameras, the legal name changes, the security firm we consulted, that it all worked. That we're finally out of her reach. But I don't believe that. I've stopped believing in closure. In clean endings. In final goodbyes. What I do believe in is patterns. And people like Elise? They always come back to finish the story they started, especially when they think it still belongs to them. So we stay quiet. We stay ready. We teach our son to be careful, but not afraid. We smile when we need to, but we never stop watching. And every time I pass someone on the street who seems just a little too familiar, I remind myself, she's not gone. She's just waiting for the next chapter. And I'm doing everything I can to make sure she never writes it. Thank you.